Hey, welcome back to English in Advance. I'm Jessica, and if you are watching this right now, I want you to know something. You are already doing something really smart. You are choosing to learn on purpose. You are not just scrolling through social media and hoping that some English magically sticks to your brain. No, you clicked on this video, you pressed play, and you are here. And that already puts you ahead of most people. So I am genuinely glad you are here today. Now, before we get into it, I want to ask you something. Think about the last time you were reading an article, maybe something academic, maybe a news piece, maybe even a work email, and you came across a word you did not fully understand. Did you skip it? Did you guess what it meant from context and move on? Yeah, most of us do that. And honestly, sometimes that works just fine. But sometimes that one word you skipped was actually the key to understanding the entire paragraph. And that is a frustrating feeling, right? Like you read something and you kind of get it, but not fully. And that almost understanding is what keeps a lot of B2 learners stuck right at that level, never quite breaking through to the next one. That is exactly what today's lesson is going to fix. We are going to talk about 15 academic vocabulary words that show up again and again at the B2 level. These are not random words I pulled from a dictionary. These are real words, words that appear in university textbooks, in IELTS and TOEFL reading passages, in formal writing, in educated conversations, in job interviews. These are the words that, when you know them deeply and confidently, start to make everything else feel easier. Your reading gets faster, your writing gets sharper, and when you speak, people notice. They notice because you sound fluent, not just functional. So here is what we are going to do today. For each word, I am going to give you the word itself. I am going to explain what it means in plain everyday language. I am going to use it in a few sentences so you can hear it working naturally. And then I am going to give you a little moment to practice it yourself. You can pause the video and say the sentence out loud. You can write it down. You can even just repeat after me, whatever works best for you. The goal is not to memorize these words like you are studying for a test. The goal is to understand them so well that they start to feel like yours. And before we start, if you are watching this and you find it helpful, please do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button. It only takes 1 second, and it means everything for this channel. Every time someone subscribes, it tells the platform that English in Advance is worth recommending to more learners, and that means more people get to find these lessons. So if you want to be part of a community of people who are genuinely working to improve their English, join us, hit subscribe, and let's grow together. All right, let's start with word number 1. And I am going to start here because this word is one of the most useful in the entire English language for academic and professional contexts. The word is analyze. A-N-A-L-Y-Z-E. To analyze something means to look at it very carefully, to break it down into smaller parts, and to try to understand what it really means or how it really works. It is not just looking. It is thinking deeply about what you are looking at. So imagine you are a student and your professor says, analyze the causes of the First World War. They are not asking you to list the causes. They are not asking you to just say, well, there was a war and some countries fought. They are asking you to look at those causes carefully. Think about which ones were more important. Think about how they connected to each other and explain your thinking in a logical way. That is analysis. Now, here is something really important about this word. You can analyze almost anything. You can analyze data, which means looking at numbers or information carefully to find patterns. You can analyze a poem, which means looking at the words, the structure, the emotions, and figuring out what the poet was trying to say. You can analyze someone's behavior, which means thinking carefully about why they act the way they do. The word is extremely flexible. Let me give you some example sentences so you can hear how this word sounds in real conversation. The scientist analyzed the water samples to find out if they were safe to drink. The team spent 3 days analyzing the sales data before making any decisions. He sat in silence for a moment, analyzing everything she had just told him, trying to figure out what it really meant. Can you analyze this document for me and tell me if there are any problems? You see how naturally that word fits? It is never awkward. It always sounds educated and precise. Now here is your practice moment. I want you to pause or just say this out loud after me. Think of something in your own life, something you have been thinking about lately, maybe a decision you need to make or a situation at work or school. Now complete this sentence. I need to analyze and finish it with whatever that thing is. Go ahead. Take a second. Great. Let me tell you why this word is worth drilling. Because in academic English, the word analyze shows up everywhere. Essays ask you to analyze. Exams ask you to analyze. Job interviews ask you to analyze a situation and tell them your thinking. And when you can use this word confidently and correctly, you sound like someone who thinks carefully and speaks precisely. And that is exactly the impression you want to give. Now let's move on to word number 2. This one is going to feel familiar, but a lot of learners do not use it as fluently as they should. The word is significant. S-I-G-N-I-F-I-C-A-N-T. Something that is significant is important. It matters. It has meaning or value. It is not a minor detail. It is something that actually makes a difference. But here is the thing about significant that makes it special in academic English. It carries a sense of weight and seriousness. When you say something is significant, you are not just saying it is nice or interesting. You are saying it genuinely matters, often in a bigger picture kind of way. So you might say, this discovery is significant because it changes everything we thought we knew about this topic. See, it has authority. It has gravity. The opposite of significant is insignificant, which means unimportant or so small it does not really matter. And knowing the opposite always helps you understand a word better. If someone says the difference was insignificant, they mean yes, there was a difference, but it was so tiny, it did not really change anything. Here are some examples. There was a significant increase in the number of students applying for scholarships that year. The researchers found no significant link between the two factors. It may seem like a small change, but it has a significant impact on how the entire system functions. She made a significant contribution to the project, and her team knew it. Do you notice something? Significant can go before nouns. Significant increase, significant impact, significant change. That is one of the most natural ways to use it. And it can also come after a verb, like the results were significant, or the role he played was significant. Your practice sentence is this. Think about something that has made a difference in your life, something real, and say it like this. Learning English has been significant for me because, and then finish the thought honestly. Say it out loud. Own that sentence. Let's keep going. Word number 3. The word is establish. ESTABLISH. To establish something means to set it up, to create it, or to make it solid and official. It can also mean to prove or demonstrate something so clearly that it becomes accepted as true or real. So you might establish a business, which means you started it and made it official. You might establish a rule, which means you put that rule in place. A researcher might establish a connection between two things, which means they proved that the connection is real. Or you might establish yourself as an expert in something, which means over time, you have built a reputation so that people recognize you as someone who really knows what they are talking about. There is something powerful about this word. It suggests permanence and credibility. Things that are established are not temporary. They are solid. They have been put in place carefully, and they are meant to stay. Let me give you examples. The organization was established in 1987 to support young writers. Scientists have now established that regular exercise significantly reduces the risk of heart disease. She worked for years to establish herself as a leading voice in environmental policy. The two countries established a trade agreement that would benefit both economies for decades. Practice time. I want you to think about something you have built or created or proven in your own life, something you are proud of, and say this, I have established, and finish it. Maybe it is a habit. Maybe it is a reputation at work. Maybe it is a friendship. Whatever feels true. Say it. All right, word number 4, and this one is absolutely everywhere in academic and professional writing. The word is concept. CONCEPT. A concept is an idea, especially a general or abstract idea. It is a way of thinking about something, a mental framework for understanding a category or a topic. So, for example, democracy is a concept. It is not a physical thing you can hold in your hand. It is an idea, a way of organizing society and government. Justice is a concept. Freedom is a concept. Evolution is a concept. Love is a concept. These are all mental frameworks that we use to make sense of the world. In academic writing and speech, you will often see phrases like the concept of followed by an idea, the concept of fairness, the concept of time, the concept of identity. And when someone says, I need to grasp this concept, they mean they need to understand the idea fully, not just know the definition of the word. Here are your example sentences. The concept of sustainability has become central to modern business thinking. Students sometimes struggle with the concept of infinity because it goes beyond anything we can see or touch. She explained the concept so clearly that even the youngest students in the room understood it immediately. The entire book is built around one central concept, and once you understand that concept, everything else clicks into place. That last example is interesting because it shows you something important. A concept can be simple or complex, but once you really understand it, it unlocks other understanding. Think about a concept in your own field of study or work that was hard to understand at first. Now complete this practice sentence. At first, the concept of was difficult for me, but now I understand that. Go ahead and think through that one. It requires you to actually recall something real. And that makes the learning stick. Now, here is word number 5. And I love this one because it is deceptively simple. The word is factor. Factor. A factor is something that contributes to a result or situation. It is one of the causes or influences that together create an outcome. So imagine you are thinking about why someone is healthy or unhealthy. Their diet is a factor. Their exercise habits are a factor. Their sleep patterns are a factor. Their stress levels are a factor. Their genetics are a factor. None of these things alone is the complete answer, but each one contributes to the overall result. That is what a factor is. You will often hear phrases like a key factor, which means one of the most important contributing elements, or a contributing factor, which just means something that played a role, or factors such as, which introduces a list of contributing elements. These phrases are golden for academic writing because they let you talk about causes and influences in a sophisticated way. Examples: poor nutrition was identified as a major factor in the declining health of the community. Several factors contributed to the company's success, including strong leadership, talented employees, and a bit of good timing. The weather was not the only factor. The team's preparation and strategy played an equally important role. When trying to understand human behavior, you have to consider multiple factors at once. For your practice, I want you to pick something that happened recently, anything at all, a decision you made, something that went well or did not go so well, and say one important factor in that situation was, and explain it. Do not overthink it. Just talk through it naturally. All right, we are now at word number 6, and this one is going to feel very satisfying once you start using it because it sounds incredibly polished and academic. The word is evaluate. Evaluate. To evaluate something means to judge its value, quality, or importance. It means to look at something carefully and decide how good it is, how useful it is, or how true it is. Evaluate is a bit different from analyze, even though they are related. When you analyze, you break something down to understand it. When you evaluate, you make a judgment about it. You assess it. You decide how well it works, how valuable it is, or how much you can trust it. So analysis leads to evaluation. You first understand, and then you judge. In academic settings, you will be asked to evaluate evidence, evaluate arguments, evaluate policies, evaluate research methods. This word is incredibly common in university contexts, and it is also very common in professional settings. Your manager might ask you to evaluate a new system or evaluate the performance of a process. Here are your examples. The committee was asked to evaluate all the proposals and select the best one. She evaluated the research carefully before deciding to include it in her paper. It is important to evaluate the information you find online rather than assuming it is all accurate. The teacher evaluated each student's progress at the end of the semester. For your practice, I want you to think about something you have recently had to make a decision about, and say this sentence: when I was deciding about, I had to evaluate, and then finish the thought. Maybe you were deciding about a course, or a job, or a purchase. Walk through your thinking in English. Okay, we are at the halfway point. Word number 7. And this is a big one for reading comprehension and for writing strong arguments. The word is evidence. Evidence. Evidence is information or facts that support or prove a point. It is what you show to demonstrate that something is true or to make a claim believable. Think of a courtroom. A lawyer cannot just stand up and say, "My client is innocent, trust me." They need evidence, they need facts, witnesses, documents, records, something that supports the claim they are making. The same is true in academic writing and in persuasive speaking. You cannot just make a statement and expect people to believe it. You need evidence. In English, there are specific phrases that are associated with evidence. We talk about providing evidence, gathering evidence, examining evidence, and drawing conclusions from evidence. And we distinguish between strong evidence, which is very convincing, and weak evidence, which is not very convincing, maybe because it is based on one small study or one person's opinion. Your examples. The doctor said there is strong evidence to suggest that diet plays a huge role in mental health. She could not find enough evidence to support her argument, so she went back to the library and did more research. The investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing. The evidence clearly pointed in one direction, yet the decision makers chose to ignore it, which is something that happens more often than we like to admit. Practice sentence. Think about something you believe strongly, something you have an opinion about, and say, "I believe that." And the evidence for this includes, try to name at least one or two things that support your belief. This is a skill that is incredibly valuable in academic and professional communication. Word number 8. This one is short but powerful. The word is impact. I-M-P-A-C-T. Impact is the effect or influence that something has on something else. It is what happens as a result of something. And the reason this word is so useful is because it works in so many different contexts and can describe effects that are large, lasting, and meaningful. You might talk about the impact of climate change on sea levels, the impact of technology on education, the impact of a speech on an audience, the impact of a new policy on a community, the impact of stress on health. This word is used constantly in journalism, academic writing, business, politics, and everyday conversation. Once you start noticing it, you will see it absolutely everywhere. Here is an important note. Impact can be a noun and also a verb, though using it as a verb is slightly more informal. As a noun, we say it had a significant impact. As a verb, we might say it impacted the whole system. In academic writing, the noun form is more common, but both are perfectly acceptable. Examples for you. The new law had a major impact on small businesses across the country. She had no idea how much her words would impact the people listening. The research examined the long-term impact of childhood trauma on adult relationships. We need to think carefully about the environmental impact of our choices as consumers. Practice. Think about something or someone who has had a strong effect on you, positively or negatively, and say, "The biggest impact on my life has been because." Give yourself a full sentence. Make it personal. Those are the sentences you remember. Now we are moving to word number 9, and this one is so common in academic texts that you absolutely cannot afford not to know it. The word is imply. I-M-P-L-Y. To imply something means to suggest it without saying it directly. When you imply something, you are hinting at an idea, pointing toward a meaning without spelling it out completely. And here is the important distinction. There is a difference between implying and inferring. The speaker or writer implies. The listener or reader infers. So if a text implies something, it means the author is suggesting it between the lines. And if you infer something from a text, it means you picked up on that suggestion and drew a conclusion from it. This word is everywhere in reading comprehension questions. What does the author imply? What can be inferred from this passage? These are classic question types on IELTS, TOEFL, and academic exams. And understanding the word imply helps you answer these questions correctly. Examples. His tone of voice implied that he was not happy with the decision, even though he said everything was fine. The study's results imply that current health guidelines may need to be updated. She did not say it directly, but her comment implied that she thought he was wrong. The statistics imply a growing problem that the government has not yet addressed. For your practice, I want you to think about a time when someone said something to you that had a hidden meaning behind it, or when you understood something that was not said directly. And complete the sentence. When he or she said that, they implied that use the word in a real context from your memory. All right, word number 10. And this one is really satisfying to use because it sounds sophisticated and it covers a wide range of situations. The word is context. CONTEXT. Context is the circumstances or background information that surrounds something and helps you understand its meaning. Without context, words, actions, or events can be misunderstood. Think about this. If someone tells you she walked out, you might not know what that means. Did she walk out of a building? Did she walk out of a meeting in protest? Did she walk out of a relationship? The meaning changes completely depending on the context. Context is what gives meaning its shape. In language learning, context is especially important because words often have multiple meanings, and the context tells you which meaning applies. The word bank, for example, can mean a financial institution or the side of a river. Context tells you which one is meant. In academic writing, you will often see phrases like in this context, within the context of, or we need to consider the broader context. These phrases show you are thinking carefully about the circumstances surrounding an idea. Examples. It is important to understand the historical context before forming an opinion about these events. That joke might have been funny in a different context, but in this situation, it was not appropriate at all. She read the quote without its full context, which meant she misunderstood the author's meaning entirely. Always consider the context when you are interpreting someone's behavior. Your practice sentence. Think about something you said or did that was misunderstood because the other person did not have enough context. And say, once I explained the context, people understood that. Or if you prefer, think about a word you recently learned and describe what context helps you understand it. For example, the word makes more sense when you see it in the context of word number 11. Here is one that a lot of B2 learners know, but do not use precisely enough. The word is assume, A-S-S-U-M-E. To assume something means to accept that it is true without actually having proof. It is when you believe something is the case, often without checking, often because it seems obvious or likely. Now, assuming is not always bad. We have to make assumptions in life. We assume that the sun will rise tomorrow. We assume that water is safe to drink when we turn on the tap. But in academic thinking, being aware of your assumptions is really important. Because if your assumption is wrong, everything you build on top of it falls apart. In academic writing, you will see phrases like this assumes that, or we cannot assume that, or one common assumption is that. These phrases are used to signal when a piece of reasoning is based on something that has been taken for granted rather than proven. Examples. Many people assume that learning a language is easier for children than for adults, but the research on this is actually more complicated than that. We cannot simply assume that what works in one culture will automatically work in another. He assumed she would be available, so he did not bother to ask. The entire argument assumes that economic growth is always a good thing, but that assumption deserves to be questioned. For practice, think about a common assumption that people in your country or culture have about something, maybe about education, success, or relationships. Say this: many people assume that, but in reality, that is a sentence structure that shows critical thinking, and critical thinking is exactly what B2 and above learners need to demonstrate. We are getting close to the end now. Word number 12 is a word that transforms the quality of your arguments instantly. The word is perspective. Perspective. A perspective is a particular way of thinking about or looking at something. It is your point of view, your angle, the lens through which you see a situation. Everyone has a perspective, and different people can look at the exact same situation and see it very differently because their perspectives are shaped by their experiences, their culture, their values, their knowledge, and their feelings. Understanding this is central to academic thinking and to good communication in general. You will hear phrases like "from a different perspective," "from my perspective," "a new perspective," or "considering multiple perspectives." When you are able to see an issue from more than one perspective, you are demonstrating a kind of intellectual maturity that is highly valued in education and in professional life. Examples. From a scientific perspective, the findings are quite alarming. She had never considered the issue from the perspective of someone who had grown up in poverty. Reading literature from different cultures gives you a wider perspective on what it means to be human. It is easy to dismiss an argument you disagree with, but it is more valuable to try to understand the perspective behind it first. Practice. Think of an issue or topic you feel strongly about, and now deliberately try to see it from the opposite side. Then say this: I personally believe, but from a different perspective, someone might argue that this exercise is excellent for both critical thinking and for developing sophisticated speaking skills. Okay, word number 13. And this one is going to help you enormously with reading comprehension. The word is indicate. INDICATE. To indicate something means to point toward it, to show it, or to be a sign of it. When data indicates something, it means the data is showing or suggesting that something is true. When you indicate something in writing or speech, you are making it clear, often without stating it in a very direct way. The word indicate is used constantly in academic texts. Research indicates that. The evidence indicates. These findings indicate. The graph indicates. It is a very clean, neutral word for saying that something suggests or shows a conclusion. Examples. The results of the survey indicate that most people are concerned about air quality in their cities. Her expression indicated that she was not comfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. A high fever can indicate the presence of an infection. The data clearly indicates a shift in consumer behavior over the past decade. For practice, think about something in your life right now that tells a story, maybe something about your study habits, your health, your relationships, or your work. And say the fact that indicates that. Fill in both blanks with something honest. For example, the fact that I watch English videos every day indicates that I am serious about improving. Word number 14. This one is beautiful. The word is contribute. CONTRIBUTE. To contribute means to give something, to add something, to play a part in something. When you contribute to a project, you add your effort or ideas to it. When a factor contributes to a result, it means it played a role in causing that result. When you contribute to a conversation or a discussion, you share your voice and your ideas. This word carries a positive energy most of the time. It suggests active participation, adding value, being part of something bigger. And in academic English, it is used to describe how different factors or elements combine to produce an outcome. Examples. Each student was asked to contribute at least one idea to the group discussion. Poor planning and lack of communication contributed to the project's failure. She contributed significantly to the research by gathering and analyzing the field data. Every small action you take can contribute to a larger change in the community around you. Your practice. Think about something you are part of, a team, a family, a community, a group of learners, and say, I contribute to, be specific. What do you actually give? What role do you play? This kind of reflective thinking in English is very powerful for language development. And finally, word number 15. Let's finish with a word that will absolutely elevate the sophistication of your writing and speaking. The word is approach. APROACH. An approach is a way of doing something or thinking about something. It is a method or strategy. When you talk about your approach to a problem, you are explaining the way you are going about solving it. In academic contexts, you will often see phrases like a different approach, a new approach, a traditional approach, or this approach suggests. These phrases signal that the writer is discussing not just what they did, but how they thought about it and why they chose a particular method. Approach can also be a verb. When you approach a topic or a problem, you begin to deal with it in a certain way. And knowing that it works as both a noun and a verb makes it even more useful. Examples. We need a completely different approach to solving this problem. Her approach to teaching was unconventional, but the results were remarkable. The research team chose a qualitative approach because they wanted to understand people's lived experiences rather than just their behaviors. Instead of approaching the issue with frustration, he tried to approach it with curiosity, and that made all the difference. For your final practice, think about something challenging in your life right now, something you are working on or working through, and say, my approach to is to, and then describe what you actually do. Be honest and thoughtful. That is the kind of language practice that actually moves the needle. Now, I want to take a moment before we wrap up because we have done a lot today, and I want to make sure you feel like it all comes together. Let's do a quick, relaxed review of all 15 words. I will say each one, and just a brief reminder of what it means, and I want you to try to recall a sentence for each one in your head. You do not have to say it out loud. Just see if the word feels familiar to you now. Analyze, to look at something carefully and break it down to understand it. Significant, important in a meaningful, weighty way. Establish, to set something up, to create it, or to prove it clearly. Concept, a general or abstract idea a mental framework, factor, something that contributes to a result or outcome. Evaluate, to judge the quality, value, or accuracy of something. Evidence, information or facts that support or prove a point. Impact, the effect or influence that something has on something else. Imply, to suggest something without saying it directly. Context, the surrounding circumstances that give meaning to something. Assume, to accept something as true without proof. Perspective, a particular way of looking at or thinking about something. Indicate, to point toward, show, or be a sign of something. Contribute, to give, add, or play a part in something. Approach, a method or way of doing or thinking about something. How did that feel? Were some words clearer than others? Were there one or two that still feel a little slippery? That is completely normal. Vocabulary learning is not a one-time event. It is a process. You will see these words again. You will hear them. You will use them. And each time you do, they will become a little more yours. Now, let me tell you something I really believe as a language teacher. The students who improve the fastest are not necessarily the ones who study the most hours. They are the ones who study with intention. They choose specific words and they commit to them. They notice those words when they read. They try to use those words when they write. They do not just learn words. They internalize them. And that is the difference between knowing a word and owning a word. I want you to own these 15 words. So here is what I recommend you do after this video. Take a piece of paper or open a notes app, and for each of these 15 words, write one original sentence about your own life. Not a sentence from this video, not a sentence from a textbook, a sentence about something real in your world. Analyze your morning routine. Talk about what is significant to you right now. Establish something you want to build. Describe a concept you are learning. Name a factor in a decision you need to make. Write in your own words about your own life using these new words. That exercise alone will do more for your vocabulary than reading 100 word lists ever could. Now, there is something else I want to address before we close. A lot of B2 learners tell me they feel a kind of invisible ceiling. They feel like their English is good but not great. They can understand most things, but not everything. They can express most ideas, but not all of them. And they are not sure what is standing between them and the next level. And I want to tell you honestly, from someone who has worked with hundreds of learners at exactly this stage, that vocabulary is almost always a big part of it. Not grammar, not pronunciation, vocabulary. Knowing the right words deeply and confidently is what lets you unlock those final doors. And it is not just about quantity. It is not about knowing 10,000 words versus 5,000 words. It is about knowing the words you do know with precision. Knowing not just what they mean, but how they work in a sentence, what they imply, what they suggest, when to use them and when not to, what they sound like, what they pair with. That depth of knowledge is what separates a B2 learner from a C1 learner. And that is where we are heading together. I want to spend a few more minutes now doing something really useful. Let's go deeper into a few of these words because I think there are some nuances worth exploring. Let's start with the word significant again because I want to show you something interesting about it. When something is significant, it has meaning, right? But the word significant in academic English often appears alongside specific things: significant difference, significant increase, significant decrease, significant role, significant impact. These are called collocations, which means word combinations that naturally go together. Native speakers and proficient users of English do not just know words, they know which words live next to each other. So when you learn significant, you should also learn its natural partners: significant rise, significant challenge, significant contribution, significant improvement. Try to learn these combinations as units, not just the word alone. The same is true for evidence. You do not just have evidence. You gather evidence. You collect evidence. You present evidence. You weigh evidence. You examine evidence. You cite evidence. These verbs pair naturally with the word evidence, and knowing this helps you sound much more fluent when you write or speak academically. And let's talk about context for a moment, because it is one of these words that learners sometimes overuse or underuse. Context is incredibly important, but it can be used as a bit of a crutch. If you find yourself saying out of context or in context without really explaining what that means, try to push yourself to be more specific. Instead of just saying that was taken out of context, you might say, that quote was taken out of context because the full conversation was actually about something different. See the difference? Specific is always better than vague. Now, I want to shift to something that I think will really help you, which is a little conversation practice. I am going to describe a situation, and I want you to respond using as many of the 15 words as you naturally can. Here is the situation. Imagine your friend is trying to decide whether to go back to university to get a master's degree. They are not sure if it is worth the time or the money. What do you say to them? Take a moment and think about this. You might want to talk about the factors they should consider. You might tell them to evaluate the options carefully. You might say that getting a degree can have a significant impact on their career. You might say they should approach the decision carefully and analyze their own goals. You might mention that from a financial perspective, it is a big commitment. You might say that evidence suggests that postgraduate education does not always lead to higher salaries in every field. Do you see how many of these words fit naturally into that conversation? And the beautiful thing is that once you start practicing this way, it becomes automatic. You stop consciously thinking about vocabulary and you just talk. And your sentences become richer, more specific, and more nuanced without you even trying. Let me give you another quick scenario. This time, you are in a work meeting. Your team is discussing a new project that did not go well. How do you talk about it? You might say, I think we need to analyze what went wrong before we move forward. You could add, from my perspective, the main issue was communication. Or, one significant factor was that we did not have enough time to prepare. You might suggest, let's approach the next project differently. And you could offer, I think if we gather more evidence about what our clients actually need, we will be better positioned to contribute something that truly has an impact. Every single one of those sentences is natural. Every one of those sentences is appropriate for a professional setting. And every one of them uses words from today's lesson. This is how vocabulary becomes functional, when it stops living in your notes and starts living in your mouth. I want to take a little detour now to talk about something that does not get discussed enough in English learning, and that is the emotional side of vocabulary acquisition. When you learn a word, especially a word that feels a bit abstract or academic, it can feel a bit cold, like you are memorizing something for a test. And that feeling actually works against you because emotion is one of the most powerful memory tools we have. So here is my suggestion. Every time you learn a new word, try to connect it to a feeling or a memory or a personal story. When you think of the word impact, do not just think of a definition. Think of the most powerful impact something has ever had on you. The first time you heard a piece of music that made you cry. The moment when someone's words changed how you thought about something. The day a decision opened a door you did not even know existed. When the word is connected to something that actually moved you, you will never forget it. And when you think of contribute, think about a time when you gave something to a group or a project and it actually made a difference. Think of the satisfaction of that. And when you think of perspective, think about a time when someone showed you a completely new way of seeing something and it genuinely surprised you. Vocabulary with emotion sticks. Vocabulary without emotion slips away. All right, let's spend a little more time on listening comprehension now, because that is part of what today's lesson is all about. I am going to say a few short paragraphs, and I want you to listen carefully and see if you can identify the words from today's lesson as you hear them. Listen for them. Notice when they appear, and if you want, you can write them down. Here is the first paragraph. New research has analyzed the long-term impact of social media use on teenagers. The findings indicate that significant changes in sleep patterns are common among daily users. Scientists established a clear link between late-night screen time and reduced sleep quality. From a health perspective, this is deeply concerning. The evidence suggests that parental guidance and structured screen time limits could contribute to better outcomes for young people. Did you catch them all? Let me name them: analyzed, impact, indicate, significant, established, perspective, evidence, contribute. Outcomes is not one of our 15 words, but it is a great B2 word too, and you should add it to your vocabulary list. All the others were there. Here is paragraph 2. To fully understand this policy, we need to consider the broader context. Many people assume that economic growth automatically benefits everyone, but that assumption deserves to be evaluated carefully. In reality, multiple factors influence how wealth is distributed. One concept that experts often refer to is the idea of inclusive growth, which implies that development should reach people at all levels of society, not just those at the top. The way we approach this issue will have a lasting impact on future generations. Can you spot the vocabulary words? Context, assume, assumption, evaluated, factors, concept, implies, approach, impact, excellent. Those are 8 of our 15 words in 2 paragraphs. This is exactly how these words appear in real academic texts. They are woven into the fabric of intelligent, well-constructed sentences. Now let me do one more paragraph for you, and this one is a little more personal in tone, a bit like something you might write in an academic essay about your own experience. When I first started learning English seriously, I did not fully understand what a significant commitment it would require. I had to analyze my own habits and figure out what was working and what was not. Over time, I began to establish a daily routine that helped me make real progress. One concept that changed everything for me was the idea of active engagement, which means not just consuming content passively, but actually interacting with it, using the language, making mistakes, and learning from them. I came to realize that every factor matters, from the quality of the material you study to the attitude you bring to each session. From my perspective, the most important thing is consistency, and the evidence clearly supports this. There they are: significant, analyze, establish, concept, factor, perspective, evidence, all of them in a natural, personal narrative. When you can write a paragraph like that, you are well on your way to C1 English. I want to give you one more thing before we wrap up today, and that is a challenge, a real one. Here is what I want you to do in the next week. Every single day, pick one of these 15 words, just one, and make that word your word of the day. Use it as many times as you can in that day. Write a journal entry using that word. When you are thinking in your head about your day, try to use that word. If you have English-speaking colleagues or study partners, use the word in conversation. And at the end of the day, write one sentence using that word that captures something real about your day. If you do this for 15 days, one word per day, you will have had more meaningful contact with these words than most learners have in months. And meaningful contact is what creates lasting memory. This is not a passive challenge. This is an active one. And active learning is always more effective. Now, I want to circle back to something I said at the very beginning of this video, because I think it is worth repeating. You are here because you are serious. Not everyone who wants to improve their English actually does something about it. You did. You found this video, you stayed with it, and you engaged with the material. That is not nothing. That is actually a lot. And it is the kind of consistent, intentional effort that produces real results. I get messages from learners all the time who tell me they have been studying English for years and feel like they are not improving. And when I ask them to describe their study habits, almost always the answer is something like, I watch TV in English, or I listen to music in English. And while those things are helpful, they are not enough on their own. Passive exposure has its limits. You need active practice. You need moments where you are challenged, where you have to reach for a word, where you feel slightly uncomfortable because the language is just a little bit beyond where you are right now. That edge, that slightly uncomfortable stretch, is where learning happens. This video was designed to be that stretch for you. Not so hard that it becomes overwhelming, but challenging enough that you had to pay attention, think carefully, and engage fully. And if some of these words still feel shaky, that is fine. That is expected. Repetition is your friend. Watch this video again. Watch it in a week. Watch it in a month. See which words feel solid and which ones still need more work. That is intelligent, self-aware language learning. Let me also say something about the listening component of today's lesson specifically. Listening comprehension at the B2 level is about more than just hearing the words. It is about understanding them in real time, at real speed, with real intonation and real sentence structures. And that is a skill that only develops through regular, sustained listening practice. So I want to encourage you to make listening a daily habit. Not just watching videos, but really listening. Listen for specific words. Listen for how ideas are connected. Listen for the rhythm and flow of natural English. Notice how people structure their sentences. Notice what comes before and after these academic words. And here is something I think you will find really useful. After you finish watching this video, go to a YouTube channel or a podcast that discusses topics you are genuinely interested in, something in your field or your area of curiosity, and just listen for 15 minutes. Do not worry about understanding every single word. Just let the language wash over you and notice when you recognize something from today. Notice when a word from our list appears, and then pause and think about how it was used. That kind of active listening, where you are a detective looking for specific things, is dramatically more effective than passive listening. Your brain is engaged. It is looking for patterns. And when it finds them, it lights up and says, "I know this." And that reinforcement makes the word stick even more firmly. All right, we have had a genuinely rich lesson today, and I am really proud of you for staying with it all the way through. Let me do one final full review of all 15 words. I will give you the word, a quick definition in plain language, and one very short example sentence. Analyze. To break something down and think about it carefully. She analyzed the results and noticed something unexpected, significant, important, and meaningful. This is a significant moment for our team. Establish. To set something up or prove something clearly. He worked hard to establish trust with his new colleagues. Concept. A general idea or mental framework. The concept of fairness is central to this argument. Factor. Something that contributes to an outcome. Time was the biggest factor in our decision. Evaluate. To judge the quality or value of something, we need to evaluate each option before choosing. Evidence. Information that supports or proves a point. The evidence was clear, but people still disagreed. Impact. The effect of something on something else. The impact of the decision was felt immediately. Imply. To suggest something without saying it directly. Her silence implied that she was not happy. Context. The surrounding circumstances that give meaning. Without context, that sentence makes no sense. Assume. To accept something as true without proof. Do not assume you know what someone else is thinking. Perspective. A particular way of thinking about something. From a different perspective, the situation looks quite different. Indicate. To show or point toward something. The data indicates a growing trend. Contribute. To give, add, or play a part in something. Each person contributed something valuable to the project. Approach. A method or way of dealing with something. We tried a completely different approach, and it worked. 15 words. 15 real, powerful, beautiful words that will serve you in your reading, your writing, your listening, and your speaking. They are not just academic words. They are thinking words. They are the words of someone who is articulate, thoughtful, and precise. They are your words now. And I want to say one more thing. Language learning can sometimes feel lonely. You are working hard, often on your own, often without immediate feedback, and progress can feel slow. But I want you to know that this community right here, English in Advance, is built for you. It is built for the learner who is serious, who is willing to work, who wants to do more than just survive in English. We want to thrive in it. So please, if you have not already, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new lesson. And if this video helped you today, leave a comment below with your favorite word from the 15, just the one word that felt most useful or most interesting to you. I read every single comment, and I love knowing which words resonate with people. You can also share this video with a friend who is learning English, because sharing good resources is one of the kindest things you can do for someone who is on a learning journey, and you never know whose English you might help to transform simply by sending them a link. Thank you so much for being here today. I mean that genuinely. You made time in your day for this, and I hope it was worth it. Keep going. Keep showing up. Keep reaching for those words that are just a little beyond where you are right now, because every time you reach, you grow. And that is what English in Advance is all about. I will see you in the next lesson. Take care of yourself, practice today, and I will be here when you come back. Actually, wait. Before you go, I realize there is still so much I want to share with you today. I have been teaching English for a long time, and one thing I have noticed consistently is that learners who reach B2 often feel like they have hit a plateau. They know enough to get by. They can have conversations, they can read most things, but there is a gap between getting by and truly excelling. And that gap is often not about grammar at all. Grammar is usually solid by B2. The gap is almost always vocabulary depth. So let us spend some more time going deeper, because I genuinely want you to come out of this lesson feeling ready to take on the next level. Let me take you back to word number 1, analyze, because I want to expand on something I touched on earlier. When you analyze something, you are doing one of the most sophisticated cognitive tasks a human being can do. You are not just observing, you are organizing, you are questioning, you are comparing, you are drawing connections. And in English, this depth of thinking shows up in the language you use to describe it. When academic writers analyze, they use specific phrases to signal what they are doing. Phrases like upon closer examination, when we break this down, looking at this from a structural angle, or if we consider each component separately. These are analytical framing phrases, and learning them alongside the word analyze gives you a whole toolkit, not just a single tool. Let me give you a longer example of analysis in action. Imagine a student writing about why some cities have more traffic congestion than others. A surface level observation would be City A has more traffic than City B because more people live there, but an analysis would look like this. When we analyze the traffic patterns in City A, several factors emerge. The population density is higher, but that alone does not explain the congestion. If we examine the public transportation infrastructure, we find it is underfunded and unreliable. This leads many residents to rely on private vehicles, which compounds the problem. Additionally, the city's urban planning, which was designed before car ownership became widespread, has not adapted to meet current demands. Do you see the difference? The analysis goes deeper. It asks why. It makes connections. And it uses language that signals careful, organized thinking. That is what analyzing sounds like. And the word analyze, used correctly, signals to your reader or listener that you are doing this kind of thinking. Now let me revisit the word establish, because there is a nuance here that I think is worth your time. When you establish something in academic writing, it often means you are creating a foundation for an argument. You establish a definition before you use a term. You establish a context before you discuss events. You establish credibility before you make a claim. It is a structural word as much as a content word. And knowing that helps you use it more strategically. For instance, if you are writing an academic essay and you want to make an argument about the effects of social media on mental health, you might begin by establishing several things. First, what you mean by social media, because not everyone uses the term in the same way. Second, what the existing research has already shown so that your reader understands the context. Third, the specific population you are focusing on, because the effects might be different for teenagers versus adults versus elderly people. Only once you have established these foundational elements does your own argument begin to carry weight. This is why establish is such a powerful academic word. It is not just about starting something. It is about building solid ground beneath an idea before you put weight on it. Native academic writers do this intuitively, and once you understand the word at this level, you will start doing it too. Let me also go deeper on the word perspective, because I think it is one of the most intellectually important words on our list today. A perspective is more than just an opinion. An opinion is what you think. A perspective is the angle from which you think it, shaped by your entire experience as a human being. And when you demonstrate in your writing or speaking that you can recognize and engage with multiple perspectives, you are showing something very valuable, which is intellectual humility and critical thinking. There is a research-based reason why this matters in language learning too. Studies have shown that learners who are able to understand and articulate different perspectives in their target language are significantly more advanced than those who can only express their own point of view. Because expressing your own view is, cognitively speaking, easier. You know what you think, but articulating someone else's perspective, especially one you disagree with, requires a higher level of linguistic and cognitive control. So when you practice the word perspective, do not just practice it with your own view. Challenge yourself to use it in sentences where you are representing an opposing or unfamiliar viewpoint. From the perspective of a small business owner, these regulations feel overwhelming. From the perspective of an environmental activist, any compromise seems insufficient. From the perspective of a parent in a low-income household, affordable childcare is not just convenient, it is essential. These kinds of sentences show depth, empathy, and intellectual range. Now, I want to talk about something called word families, because knowing word families doubles the value of every word you learn. A word family is a group of words that share the same root and are related in meaning. Let me show you the word families for several of our 15 words. Analyze. The noun form is analysis, meaning the act of examining something carefully. The adjective is analytical, meaning someone who thinks in a careful, structured way, or a process that involves careful examination. You might say she has an analytical mind, or this is an analytical approach. The adverb is analytically, meaning in an analytical way. So one word, analyze, gives you 4 forms that work in different grammatical positions. Significant. The noun form is significance, which refers to the quality or state of being important. The adverb is significantly, which means by a large or meaningful amount. You will see significantly all the time in academic writing. The population significantly increased. The results were significantly different. Learning these forms means you are not just learning one word, you are learning 4. evidence. The adjective is evident, meaning obvious or clear. The adverb is evidently, meaning obviously. And the phrase, it is evident, that is a classic academic phrase used to introduce a point that you consider to be clearly supported by data. It is evident that further research is needed. It is evident that the policy has had unintended consequences. Context. The adjective is contextual, meaning relating to the context. The adverb is contextually, meaning in relation to the context. And there is also the verb to contextualize, which means to put something in its proper context so it can be understood properly. To fully contextualize this event, we need to look at what was happening in the wider world at that time. Establish. The noun is establishment, which can mean the act of setting something up, or a building or institution that has been established. But it can also mean something different. The establishment, with a capital E, often refers to the traditional powerful institutions of a society, like governments, corporations, or elite institutions. Knowing this broader meaning helps you understand many political texts and news articles. Now let me do this for a few more words. Approach has the noun form approach, but also the related adjective approachable, meaning easy to talk to or deal with, and unapproachable, meaning the opposite. Factor does not have many common family forms, but the verb factorize exists in mathematics, and the phrase to factor in, meaning to include something as a consideration, is very useful. You should factor in the cost of living when deciding where to move. Contribute has the noun contribution, meaning the thing you give or add, and the adjective contributory, meaning playing a role in causing something. Smoking is a contributory factor in many serious illnesses, and the word contributor refers to a person who contributes something. Evaluate has the noun evaluation, meaning the process or result of judging something, and the adjective evaluative, meaning relating to evaluation. An evaluative framework, an evaluative report, these are common in education and business contexts. Imply has the noun implication, which is one of the most important related words on this list. An implication is a possible consequence or a suggested meaning. When we say the implications of this decision are serious, we mean the possible effects or consequences are serious. And when we say there is an implication that suggests wrongdoing, we mean there is a hint or suggestion of it in what has been said or done. If you understand implication deeply, your reading comprehension will improve dramatically. Assume has the noun assumption, which we already discussed, and the adjective assumed, meaning taken for granted, an assumed truth, an assumed role, the assumed benefits. These are all natural collocations you will encounter in academic reading. Now, I want to spend some time with you on something I think is genuinely undervalued in language education, and that is the skill of noticing. Noticing is when you pay conscious attention to how language is used, not just what it means, but how it functions in context. Researchers in second language acquisition have found that learners who notice more improve faster. This is not a passive skill. It requires you to be awake, alert, and curious when you are engaging with English. So here is a practical noticing exercise I want you to try. Take any article from a reputable English news source, something from the BBC, The Guardian, the New York Times, or a similar publication. Read the article once for understanding, then read it again with a specific task. Find every word from today's list that appears in the article. If none of them appear, Look for academic or semi-formal words that seem similar in function or register. Then ask yourself, what is this word doing in this sentence? What would the sentence lose if you removed this word and replaced it with a simpler one? This exercise teaches you to see words as active, functional elements, not just labels attached to meanings. And that shift in perception is one of the hallmarks of an advanced learner. Let me now address a question I know many of you are probably thinking about, which is how to use these words in speaking without sounding unnatural or stiff, because that is a real concern. You have probably met people who clearly learned English from textbooks and sound like they are reading from one when they speak. And that is not what we want. The key is what I call soft integration. You do not want to drop an academic word into a casual sentence like you are showing off. It sounds jarring. If you are having a relaxed chat with a friend and suddenly you say, I must evaluate the contextual implications of this decision, they will look at you strangely. Context matters. And you have to match your language to the register, which means the level of formality of the conversation. But here is the thing. These 15 words are actually flexible across registers. They are not only formal words. They sound natural in professional conversations, in academic discussions, in thoughtful personal conversations. The key is the surrounding language. If you wrap these words in simple, warm, natural sentences, they blend in perfectly. So instead of saying, I must evaluate the contextual implications, you might say something like, I just want to think this through properly before I decide. And a big part of that is figuring out how it fits into everything else that is going on right now. See? That is contextual evaluation in plain English. But if you wanted to be a bit more precise, a bit more academic, you could lift just one of the words and say, I want to evaluate my options before I make a move. That works in almost any conversation. It is clear, it is appropriate, and it sounds confident. And that is the balance we are looking for. Not speaking like a textbook, not speaking too casually either, speaking with precision and warmth. That combination is what people find genuinely impressive in a language learner. Let me also talk about reading strategies for a moment, because this lesson is about listening practice, but reading and listening are deeply connected skills. The vocabulary you build through reading feeds directly into your listening comprehension, and vice versa. So let me give you a few reading strategies specifically designed to build the kind of vocabulary we have been discussing today. The first strategy is called the iceberg method. When you encounter a new word, do not just look up the tip of the iceberg, which is the basic definition. Go deeper. Look for how many times the word appears on the page you are reading. Look for what words come before and after it. Look for whether it is being used positively, negatively, or neutrally. Look for whether it is a noun, a verb, adjective, or adverb in this particular sentence. All of that information is part of what the word really means in context, and it is what helps you use it accurately yourself. The second strategy is prediction. Before you look up a word, try to guess its meaning from context. Then look it up and see how close you were. This process of active guessing, checking, and correcting is one of the most powerful ways to build lasting vocabulary knowledge. Even if you were completely wrong, the act of having thought about it first makes the correct meaning stick much better. The third strategy is vocabulary mapping. When you learn a new academic word, write it in the center of a piece of paper and then draw branches out from it. One branch for the definition, one for word family members, one for collocations, meaning the words it naturally pairs with, one for an example, sentence from a real text, and one for a personal sentence you wrote yourself. This visual organization uses multiple memory systems at once and makes the word much more accessible when you need it later. And the fourth strategy, which I have already mentioned but I want to emphasize again, is using the word immediately in your own output. Writing it, speaking it. The sooner after learning a word you use it actively, the more likely it is to transfer into your long-term vocabulary. Now, I want to do something a little different, and I hope you enjoy this part. I am going to tell you a short story. It is a simple story, but it uses every single one of the 15 words at least once naturally as part of the narrative. Your task is to listen carefully and notice each word as it appears. You can pause and write them down if you want, or you can just listen and keep count in your head. Here is the story. Maya had always wanted to become a doctor, but it was not until she was 23 that she really began to analyze why. Growing up, she had assumed that medicine was simply the most practical path, the one that would make her family proud. But as she sat in her first university lecture, surrounded by students who seemed to know exactly why they were there, she realized that her perspective on medicine had been shaped by other people's expectations, not her own genuine desire. It was her professor, a calm and precise woman named Dr. Chen, who helped her establish a clearer understanding of herself. In one particular lecture, Dr. Chen introduced a concept that would change how Maya thought about her future. She called it intrinsic motivation, which she described as the inner drive that comes from doing something you genuinely care about, not something you do for external reward. The idea implied that without this kind of personal connection to your work, even great success could feel hollow. Maya began to evaluate her own motivations honestly for the first time. She gathered evidence about herself, her interests, her energy levels, her happiness. She noticed that she felt most alive, not in the labs or the lecture halls, but in the hospital corridors, talking to patients, listening to their stories, understanding the human context behind every diagnosis. That was where she felt she could truly contribute something meaningful. There were many factors that could have pushed her in a different direction. The financial pressure of medical school, the long years of training, the impact of sleep deprivation on students in the medical program. But Maya had decided to approach all of this differently. Rather than seeing the challenges as obstacles, she began to see them as part of the process, as things to be understood and navigated, not avoided. By the time she graduated, she had not only become a doctor. She had become someone who could look at a patient, listen carefully, and indicate, through her calm and thoughtful presence, that she was fully there, that she saw the whole person, not just the symptoms, and that, as Dr. Chen had once told her, was not a small thing. That was, in every significant sense of the word, what medicine was really about. Did you catch all 15 words? Let me list the ones I used so you can check. Analyze, assume, perspective, establish, concept, implied, evaluate, evidence, context, contribute, factors, impact, approach, indicate, significant, all 15. In a story that is natural, flowing, and emotionally engaging, because good academic vocabulary does not kill a story. When you use it well, it actually enriches it. I want to tell you something about language learning that I think about a lot. There is a concept in psychology called the zone of proximal development. I know that sounds very technical, but the idea is actually beautifully simple. It says that we learn best when we are working on things that are just slightly beyond what we can do alone, with a little bit of support. Not so easy that we are bored, not so hard that we are lost, right in that sweet middle zone. This lesson was designed to sit right in that zone for B2 learners. These are not basic words. They are not words you already know perfectly, but they are also not so advanced that they feel completely foreign. They are reachable. They are learnable today. And that is exactly the kind of challenge that produces growth. So if part of this lesson felt a little challenging, good. That feeling is learning happening. If you had to rewind a few times, good. That is your brain working hard to make connections. If some of these words still feel a little unfamiliar, good. That means there is still productive work to do with them, and every time you encounter them again, they will feel a little more solid. Now let me give you something really concrete to take away. Here is a writing prompt. I want you to write a short paragraph, just 5 to 8 sentences, about any topic you choose. It can be about your life, your city, your studies, your work, your interests, anything at all. But I want you to include at least 6 of the 15 words from today's lesson. Natural, flowing. Like you are writing for a real audience. You do not need to share it with anyone if you do not want to. But if you do want feedback, share it in the comments below. I will read them. And other learners can offer encouragement and suggestions too. The comment section of this video is a safe space for practice. No one is here to judge. Everyone is here to learn. Let me read you an example paragraph so you can see what this looks like. This is on the topic of city life. Living in a large city has a significant impact on how people interact with each other. From my perspective, one of the most interesting aspects of urban life is the way it brings together people with completely different backgrounds, yet somehow establishes a shared rhythm of daily existence. Researchers have analyzed the psychological effects of density and noise, and the evidence suggests that while city life is stimulating, it can also increase stress levels for many people. One key factor that seems to determine whether someone thrives in a city is their ability to approach the environment with curiosity rather than anxiety. Those who can find context and meaning in the chaos tend to contribute more to the communities they are part of and to feel more genuinely alive. That paragraph is natural. It sounds like a thoughtful person writing with intention. It is not stiff. It is not a vocabulary list. It is real writing that happens to be vocabulary rich. And that is what you are working toward. Let me also spend a few minutes talking about listening strategies specifically, because I want to make sure that part of your learning is fully covered by the end of this lesson. Listening in a second language is genuinely hard. Even learners who have very strong reading and writing skills sometimes struggle with listening, and the reason is quite specific. When you read, you control the speed. You can go slowly, you can reread, but when you listen, the speaker controls the speed, and the words disappear as soon as they are spoken. There is no rewind button in real life. So how do you train your brain to process spoken academic English more efficiently? There are a few specific strategies that really work. The first is chunking. Train your ears to listen in phrases rather than individual words. Native speakers do not produce one word at a time. They produce chunks of language, like the impact of from a different perspective. The evidence suggests when you can recognize these chunks as units, your processing speed increases dramatically because you are not decoding word by word anymore. The second strategy is predictive listening. This is when you use your knowledge of how sentences work in English to anticipate what is coming next. For example, if you hear the word although, you know a contrast is coming. If you hear one factor is, you know the speaker is about to name something that contributed to a result. If you hear the evidence indicates, you know a conclusion or finding is coming. This predictive ability comes from knowing vocabulary deeply and knowing how it functions in sentences, which is exactly what we have been practicing today. The third strategy is top-down processing. This means using your broader knowledge about a topic to help you understand the specific words. If you know the lecture is about climate change and you hear a word you are not sure about, you can often guess from the topic that it is related to something environmental. Top-down processing fills the gaps that your vocabulary might leave open. And the fourth strategy is tolerance for ambiguity. This is a mindset strategy. Advanced listeners are comfortable not understanding every single word. They are okay with a few fuzzy spots here and there because they trust that the overall meaning will come through. This tolerance is actually a mark of a sophisticated listener. If you are the kind of learner who freezes up when you do not understand a word, try practicing the skill of letting go of individual words and focusing on the overall message. It gets easier with practice. I want to come back to something we discussed at the beginning, which was the idea of B2 learners hitting a ceiling. I want to talk about why that ceiling exists and how academic vocabulary specifically helps you break through it. The B2 level in the Common European Framework of Reference, or CEFR, is described as upper intermediate. At this level, you can understand the main ideas of complex texts on both concrete and abstract topics, including technical discussions in your field of specialization. You can interact with a degree of fluency and spontaneity that makes regular interaction with native speakers quite possible without strain for either party. You can produce clear, detailed text on a wide range of subjects and explain a viewpoint on a topical issue, giving the advantages and disadvantages of various options. That is a genuinely high level of English. But to break into C1, which is described as advanced, you need to go further. At C1, you can understand a wide range of demanding, longer texts and recognize implicit meaning. You can express yourself fluently and spontaneously without much obvious searching for expressions. You can use language flexibly and effectively for social, academic, and professional purposes. And you can produce clear, well-structured, detailed text on complex subjects. Do you see the key differences? At C1, you recognize implicit meaning, which requires knowing words like imply and infer. You express yourself without much searching for expressions, which requires having a wide and deep vocabulary. You use language flexibly and effectively, which means knowing how to shift register and choose precise words. And you handle complex subjects with well-structured text, which requires words like analyze, evaluate, establish, and approach. Every single word we study today is directly tied to the jump from B2 to C1. These are not random academic words. They are the exact words that allow you to do the things that distinguish B2 from C1 performance. So if you are serious about reaching that next level, and I think you are, because you are still here watching this, then committing to this kind of vocabulary work is genuinely one of the most important things you can do. Let me give you one more extended listening practice. This is a longer passage, and it covers a topic you will often encounter in academic English contexts. Listen carefully, take notes if you want, and see how much you can understand. The relationship between language and thought has fascinated philosophers and scientists for centuries. Many researchers have analyzed this question deeply, and the evidence suggests that the language we speak may actually influence how we think and perceive the world around us. This concept, sometimes called linguistic relativity, implies that different languages lead their speakers to think about time, space, color, and relationships in subtly different ways. For example, studies have established that speakers of languages which use absolute directions, meaning they say north, south, east, and west instead of left and right, are significantly better at maintaining a sense of their own orientation in space. They always know which way is north, even in unfamiliar environments. This seems like a small difference, but from a cognitive perspective, it indicates a fundamentally different way of organizing spatial experience. When we evaluate these findings, we have to be careful not to assume that one language is better or worse than another. The evidence does not indicate superiority, only difference. Context matters enormously here. A language that is well suited to navigating a forest may be less efficient for describing mathematical abstractions, and vice versa. Each language reflects the concerns, priorities, and environment of the people who developed it over centuries. The impact of these differences on communication and translation is significant. When a concept exists in one language but has no direct equivalent in another, translators face a genuine challenge. How do you convey an idea for which the target language has no single word? This is where knowledge of vocabulary becomes not just a practical skill, but a creative one. You must find ways to approach the meaning through alternative expressions, through context, through explanation. One factor that contributes to this challenge is that words carry not just meaning, but cultural weight. A word in one language may imply historical associations, emotional connotations, or social values that do not transfer simply by finding a rough equivalent. This is why literary translation is considered one of the most demanding forms of intellectual work. Understanding all of this can help us become more thoughtful language learners and communicators. Rather than approaching the target language as a code to crack, we might approach it as a world to enter, with its own logic, its own beauty, and its own particular way of seeing things. That was a complex passage, and if you followed most of it, you are genuinely doing very well. Let me highlight the vocabulary words that appeared: analyzed, evidence, concept, implies, established, significantly, perspective, indicates, evaluate, assume, context, impact, significant, approach, contributes, factor. Implies again, context again, approach again. Almost every word from today's list appeared naturally in that academic passage. That is not a coincidence. These words are the building blocks of academic English discourse. If you want to work with this passage further, try these exercises. First, read it aloud slowly, pausing at each vocabulary word and thinking about its precise meaning. Second, try to summarize the passage in your own words, in 3 or 4 sentences. Third, write a response to the passage, sharing your own perspective on the relationship between language and thought. And fourth, try to identify any word families in the passage. For example, significant and significantly appear. Can you find others? These exercises turn a single passage into multiple learning opportunities. And that is smart studying. All right, we are really getting close to the end now. And I want to leave you with some final thoughts that I hope will stay with you beyond today. Language learning is one of the most human things you can do. It is an act of reaching across distances, cultural distances, social distances, cognitive distances, and saying, I want to understand you. I want to be understood. I want to participate in a wider world. That impulse is beautiful, and it deserves to be honored with real effort and real commitment. You are not just learning words. You are building a richer version of yourself. Every word you truly own in English is another way of thinking, another way of expressing something you already feel or know, but now you can express it in 2 languages instead of 1. That is a kind of power, a quiet, deep, enormously valuable kind of power. And these 15 words, as academic as they might seem, are actually deeply human words. To analyze is to think carefully. To contribute is to give. To establish is to build. To evaluate is to judge wisely. To understand context is to show empathy. To consider perspective is to respect the complexity of other people's experience. To recognize evidence is to care about truth. These are not just English skills. They are human skills, expressed through English vocabulary. So the next time you sit down to study, whether it is with this video or a book or a podcast or a conversation partner, bring that awareness with you. Remember why you are doing this. Remember what it connects to. Remember that each word you learn is a door that opens onto something larger. I am truly grateful that you spent this time with me today. Every lesson I make for English in Advance is made with you specifically in mind, the serious learner, the persistent one, the one who shows up even when progress feels slow. You are who I think about when I sit down to design these lessons, and knowing that you are out there watching, practicing, growing is what makes this work feel worthwhile. So please subscribe if you have not yet. Share this lesson if you found it valuable. Leave a comment with your favorite word from today, or ask me a question you want me to address in a future lesson. Your questions genuinely shape what I make next, so please ask them. And one final thing. I want to put a challenge to you right now in this moment before you close the video and move on with your day. Write down just one sentence, any sentence at all, using one of the 15 words from today. Just one, right now, in your notes, on a piece of paper, in a comment below. Write it and own it, because that one sentence is the beginning of something. It is the first time that word truly becomes yours, in the fullness of your own voice and your own meaning. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Keep going. Keep growing. And I will see you in the very next lesson. Before we truly part ways today, I want to do something I do not always do at the end of a lesson. I want to reflect with you, openly and honestly, about the process of getting better at English. because I think there is something worth naming that does not come up enough in language learning content. There will be days when you feel amazing. You will read an article and every word will click. You will listen to a podcast and understand 90% without even trying. You will be in a conversation and the right words will come to you easily, almost like magic. Those days feel incredible. They make you feel like all the work has paid off. And then there will be other days. Days when you try to read something and the words swim in front of you. Days when you listen to someone speaking and it sounds like they are speaking twice as fast as usual. Days when you open your mouth to say something and the word you need just will not come. And those days are hard. They can make you feel like you have not progressed at all, like everything you thought you had learned has somehow evaporated overnight. Both kinds of days are part of learning. Both are real. And here is what I want you to know about the hard days. They do not mean you have stopped improving. They often mean the opposite. When you are absorbing new material, your brain is doing intense work behind the scenes, building new neural connections, strengthening pathways, reorganizing existing knowledge. And that process can sometimes make you feel temporarily less fluent, not more. Researchers call this the consolidation phase. It is a real phenomenon. And if you know it is happening, you can ride it out instead of giving up. The learners who reach fluency are not the ones who never had hard days. They are the ones who had hard days and kept going anyway. They are the ones who said, "Today was difficult, and I will try again tomorrow." They are the ones who trusted the process, even when the process was not giving them immediate feedback. So on the days when it is hard, do something small. Not something overwhelming, just something small. Read one paragraph, learn one word, write one sentence, listen for 5 minutes. Those small actions compound. They add up. And over time, they become a fluency that feels effortless because it was built on so many thousands of tiny, unglamorous daily efforts. I also want to say something about comparison because social media and the internet make it very easy to compare your progress to someone else's. And comparison is one of the most dangerous habits a language learner can develop. You might watch another learner who seems to speak flawlessly after 2 years of study and feel inadequate. But you do not know how many hours they put in every day. You do not know their starting point. You do not know whether they already spoke a closely related language. You do not know what you cannot see. Your journey is yours. Your pace is yours. Your context is yours. And measuring yourself against someone else's progress is like measuring your own shadow against someone else's. The conditions are completely different. The only comparison that matters is you versus you. Are you better than you were last month? Are you more confident than you were last year? Are those words that used to feel alien starting to feel familiar? That is the only scoreboard that matters. And I promise you, if you are engaging with lessons like this one, if you are paying attention, if you are practicing, you are getting better, even if you cannot feel it yet, especially if you cannot feel it yet. Now, let me come back to our 15 words one final time, because I want to give you something to use as a kind of anchor, a simple summary you can return to whenever you need to refresh your memory. The word analyze is about deep examination. When you analyze something, you are doing careful, organized thinking about it. Use it when you want to sound precise and thoughtful. I need to analyze the situation before I respond. The word significant is about importance and weight. When something is significant, it matters in a real and meaningful way. Use it when something deserves more attention than a simple adjective like big or important can give. The change was significant. The word establish is about creation, foundation, and proof. When you establish something, you make it solid. You build it or you prove it. We need to establish some ground rules before we begin. The word concept is about abstract ideas and mental frameworks. When you talk about a concept, you are talking about a way of thinking about something, not a physical thing. The concept of fairness is central to this argument. The word factor is about contribution and influence. A factor is one of the things that works together with other things to produce a result. Motivation is a key factor in academic success. The word evaluate is about judging value or quality. When you evaluate something, you think about how good, useful, or accurate it is. We need to evaluate this plan carefully. The word evidence is about proof and support. Evidence is what you use to show that something is true. The evidence strongly supports this conclusion. The word impact is about effect and consequence. When something has an impact, it changes something else in a meaningful way. The impact of this decision will be felt for years. The word imply is about hinting and suggesting. When you imply something, you suggest it without saying it directly. Her tone implied that she was uncomfortable with the topic. The word context is about surrounding circumstances. Context gives meaning its shape. Without understanding the context, it is easy to misinterpret. The word assume is about taking for granted. When you assume something, you believe it is true without checking. We should not assume that the data is accurate without verifying it. The word perspective is about angle and point of view. A perspective is the particular way someone sees something, shaped by their experience. From her perspective, the decision seemed completely unreasonable. The word indicate is about pointing toward and showing. When something indicates something, it is a sign or signal of it. The results indicate a positive trend. The word contribute is about giving and adding. When you contribute, you play an active role in something. Everyone on the team contributed to the final outcome. And the word approach is about method and way of doing things. When you talk about your approach, you are describing how you are going about something. We need a more creative approach to this problem. 15 words in 15 different sentences, each one natural, clear, and useful in multiple contexts. You know, one of the things I love most about teaching vocabulary at this level is that the words themselves start to feel like friends over time. At first, they are strangers. They look unfamiliar. They feel awkward in your mouth. You are not quite sure how to use them without it feeling forced. But as you see them more, use them more, hear them more, something shifts. They become familiar. They start to feel like tools you reach for naturally, like you reach for a favorite pen or a familiar route home. That familiarity is not accidental. It is built through exactly the kind of work you did today. Listening carefully, paying attention to examples, practicing in context, connecting words to real thoughts and real experiences. That is the process, and you did it. Now here is one last exercise for you. And this one is particularly effective for building speaking fluency with new vocabulary. I want you to set a timer for 3 minutes. And in those 3 minutes, I want you to talk out loud about your day or your week, using as many of the 15 words as you can naturally include. Do not force it. Do not stop when you make a mistake. Just keep talking. If a word feels wrong, skip it and move on. The goal is not perfection. The goal is flow. This exercise works because speaking fluency is built through practice, not through thinking about speaking. The more often you force yourself to produce English in a relatively stream of consciousness way, the more automatic your vocabulary access becomes. And automatic vocabulary access is what fluency actually feels like from the inside. It is when you stop searching for words and they just come. 3 minutes out loud about your day or your week, including as many of our 15 words as you can. Try it right now after the video ends, because this is one exercise that cannot happen inside the video. It has to happen in your life, in your voice, in your own words. And that is really the final thought I want to leave you with today. Everything we have done here, every word, every example, every practice prompt is preparation. It is the setup. The real learning happens in your life in the moments between lessons when you reach for one of these words and it comes to you. When you hear something you did not understand before and now you do. When you write a sentence that surprises you with its precision. When a conversation goes somewhere it would not have gone 6 months ago because your vocabulary gave you access to new ideas. That is what all of this is for. Those moments, those small, private, wonderful moments when you feel yourself becoming more capable in this language. I cannot give you those moments. Only you can create them. But I can give you the tools. And today, that is exactly what we did. 15 tools, 15 new words that belong to you now. Use them well, use them often, and come back for more. This has been English in Advance. I am Jessica, and I will see you in the next lesson.